Hi, this is Billie Jean King.
This is Marion Bartoli.
This is Bianca Andreescu.
I'm Mats Wilander.
This is Mary Carrillo.
This is Pam Schreiber.
This is Yannick Noah, and you're listening to the Tennis Podcast.
Well, hello and welcome to the Tennis Podcast, our third daily tennis podcast from Roland Garros 2025, the last of our preview shows, the final time we get to ponder what might happen and what it might mean before all the things start to actually happen. And speaking of things that might actually happen, Matt Roberts, the people are waiting with bated breath for an update on your Amanda Anisimova saga.
Saga is the right word. It is now officially a saga because I'm here to tell the people for the second time in 24 hours I got stood up by my favourite player. I made it to the area this time, but I did not come away with an interview. Unfortunately, Amanda Anisimova was not feeling well and has requested that we speak tomorrow if she wins.
So Matt's got another anxious day in store. Fingers crossed for Matt and friends of the Tennis Podcast for tomorrow, and for Amanda Anisimova, of course. There will still be an episode of Loitering with Law for friends today, because David delivers on his promises.
Correct. I wasn't stood up by Jensen Brooksby or Peyton Stearns, I'm telling you. Yeah. I'm now anxious about Amanda's result tomorrow, more than usual. I often want her to win. Now she has to win. It's vital.
Just an extra bit of jeopardy on day one of a slam.
She's playing Nina Stojanovic, who's played 9 sets in qualifying. So
is that good or bad?
I'm not sure who's feeling worse out of the two.
Okay.
A lot of people listening to this will already know the fate of Amanda Anisimova and Matt's interview. We, of course, will bring you the latest update in the saga on tomorrow's show.
It's totally going to clash with Fulham. I just know it.
Watch this space, folks. I am delighted to welcome to the show today, for the first time, I think, in real time, the Athletics' Matt Futterman.
Well, in real life.
Real.
Oh, you mean live? Real time?
I mean live for us, obviously not live for the listener, but for us you are live and in front of us.
Live and in front of you. We've done it Zoom-like. I was in a car in LA, parked, and I think I've lost track of the years, but I think it was last year with the whole Super Tour story discussion. But yeah, I think this is the first time, like, sitting around a table, holding a microphone that says the Tennis Podcast on it.
Matt was a bit disappointed that we didn't bring beers.
Next time, Matt.
He's seen the way we record sometimes.
I think you have to be, it's possible that you have to be a multiple Grand Slam doubles champion and U.S. Open finalist in order to have beers provided for you. So, but it's okay.
Pam was the one that was there for Matt in his lowest moment earlier, though, to pick him up off the floor when he was feeling jilted.
And in fairness, sometimes Pam brings her own alcohol.
Contraband.
Matt, it's great to have you with us here.
It's great to be here.
Here on Roland Garros Kids Day, but they call it Yannick Noah Day here. But the sound of joyous, slightly hyped up children is what you're hearing as ambience in the background. Today has been sort of media day times 2. The stragglers have been through the press conference room today. We've had Naomi Osaka, Casper Ruud, Matt. I think you probably speak to even more players than we do on media day. I bumped into Matt yesterday seeking directions to the Suzanne Lenglen mixed zone, which is a level of commitment to media day that not even David Law has shown up until this point.
I don't even know where that is.
Neither did Matt.
It's honestly a level of commitment to Victoria Mboka, who made it through qualifying. really impressive. I mean, this was like a player who was playing 15,000s a few months ago, and just look at her record the last year. I mean, I don't want to say this is like out of nowhere, but something clicked in the last few months, and I think she won something like 25 matches in a row, which, I mean, I think most professional tennis players will tell you that, you win 25 matches in a row, at any level, you're playing really well. It doesn't matter if they're ATP matches or if they're, it's hard to win tennis matches. And so, that, it sort of reminds me of, I'll make the baseball reference for people who understand those things. But when people, bat 300, which is quite good. If you do it in the minor leagues, it's like, okay, you're playing well. It doesn't matter if you do it, in the minor leagues or in the major leagues. You're swinging the bat well. And so that's what I sort of thought of when I saw, wow, Victoria Mboko's won that many matches in a row, and she, qualified at the Italian Open, and she now qualified here, and she's 18 years old, and she's sort of Canadian and Congolese as well, and so I think she's a pretty exciting character to potentially have, and that's what was taking me to the Suzanne Lenglen.
Is she one of those precociously talented 18-year-olds that seems well beyond her years when you speak to her, or is she one of those precociously talented teenagers that seems her age, like Amira Andreeva, who seems reassuringly teenage when you speak to her, even though she's way beyond her years tennis-wise?
She kind of goes back and forth because, I mean, she's very cool about it all. I was like, did you sleep last night? This is her first Grand Slam main draw that she was trying to qualify for. And she was like, yeah, I slept great. Why wouldn't I have? Why wouldn't I have slept? And I was like,
that is
I don't
kind
know.
of what I want to say when people ask me if I slept well.
Right. And she was like,
yeah, I'm me.
Yeah.
That's what I do best.
Yeah, it's been pretty cool, fun, sort of in one sense, like a very cool cat. And then when we were talking in Rome, and I asked her, I was what are your parents tennis heads? What do they do for a living? And she was like, I'm not exactly sure. And I was like, okay, that's an answer. So maybe they're spies, and that's what she has to say. But if we're assuming that they're not spies, she's a teenager who's just sort of in her own world and doing her thing. And so, and I kind of I love the ambivalence of that. I think it's very entertaining.
You need the breath of fresh air, don't you, on media day, when you're getting all of tennis's faces and voices crammed into a short period. There's a lot of hamster wheel energy, isn't there? There's a lot of jadedness out there. There's a lot of people just trotting out the lines. So you need that reinvigoration of somebody that it's all new to and that is experiencing it for the first time, and that can rub off on you a little bit. Yeah,
because they've all done it so many times before. We've all done it so many times before. You have a sort of 3-day lead-in. I mean, I personally just want the thing to start now. Just get the matches going. But at the same time, when you do meet a new character like that, who is new to it and who might just breathe some fresh air into the whole sport, you could be there right at the start, like Matt over on court Suzanne Lenglen in the mixed zone there. That we could be talking about that in 10 years' time, and you remember hearing that conversation.
There was a big crowd for Alexandra Ayala in press conference 3. It's called press conference room 3. I'd like to take issue with that. I think it's false advertising. That is not a room. That is an extension of the area.
How hard was it to hear what Taylor Fritz was saying in that room? I mean,
there was something going on behind us in interview area.
Yeah.
So yeah,
my favorite place.
It was a little hard.
Why was Taylor Fritz the 4th seed in interview room 3, in press conference room 3, which is just the area. You know, that's where people like.
Looking forward to this.
Who's the example?
Help me out here. That's where Sonny Cartel was yesterday.
That's where Denis Shapovalov was yesterday. No offence.
I swear Sonny Cartel had a transcript. I think she might have been in a bigger room.
I think you might be right, actually. So why was Taylor Fritz in
don't know,
room 3?
because he was one of the best interviews we've had. I often think that. He's somebody who analyses the sport. He doesn't duck questions. He really thinks about his answers. He seems quite interested in the conversation a lot of the time. There were about 5 or 6 of us there, and yeah, I mean, I came out of that. I think it was the first press conference I attended of the day. I came out of that with about 5 talking points, because he's just the questions. I suppose we as the media know the players that you can put a question to where you might actually get some insight, and he's one of those.
Yeah, absolutely. And you sort of know the topics also that he's good to talk about. I asked him about the balls, which I have here, specifically, which I've talked to him about before.
People are upset with them being very flat, very dead.
Yeah, he's like, they're super dead. They're fun to hit with because you can, hit the crap out of it and it lands in. It's like, but then you're in a match and you have to hit the crap out of it and hope it goes through the court, and it doesn't go through. It doesn't go through the court and goes in. So, interesting to me at least, like I think it was last year when he was playing really well in Madrid, which I know is different from here. And I was asking him about clay, and he was like, look, I was absurd. When I first tried clay, I really could barely stand up. He's like, but now I don't really have a problem with clay. I'm sort of used to it, and I think I could do okay at the French Open if there were different balls. He's like, but I've never been able to hit those balls there. I just find them super dead.
I wonder who it does favour. Is there a certain type of player who these balls are going to favour?
I don't. Yeah, we could like speculate and
we'll find out in 2 weeks, David.
Right, make something up. But it definitely favors someone who is able. I mean, as Taylor said, it favors someone who's able to sort of, we all know who he's talking about here, can generate power out of nowhere and
control it. I guess so. Power with spin.
Yeah, and there's 2 players who can generate power out of nowhere, and they're probably going to play. And they're probably going to play in the final. So.
And the other one is the winner of the tournament, Joao Fonseca.
Absolutely. There you go. There's your final.
David, one of the other topics I know you, not just you, but everybody in the huddle with Taylor Fritz huddle area.
Slightly larger area than the area, yeah.
I feel like a huddle implies standing up, and we were seated.
Right, okay. Everybody was seated?
We were all seated,
okay.
Yeah. There is seating in interview room 3.
Intimate seating situation.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the topics that I know came up there was one that ended up being a running theme throughout a lot of today's press conference, and a couple yesterday, but I feel like it really blossomed into a theme today, and that was a talking point that was actually started by Caroline Garcia. First, back in September, when she put a premature end to her season at the end of September following the US Open, she posted at the time, every week of rest feels like taking a step back, losing points in the rankings and missing out on opportunities. Physically, I feel I pushed my shoulder to the limit, trying to recover while competing, but it hasn't worked. The truth is, I need more rest time to recover properly. Lately, I've felt overwhelmed by the tour, the pressure to perform, and the scrutinizing eyes on every move. I've been battling anxiety, shutting myself off, feeling trapped on the court. Winning no longer brings me satisfaction. It simply gives me relief that it's over. Now, as we know, she did return for the 2025 season, but this week she announced that 2025 would be her last year on tour, and that this is her last Roland Garros. And that announcement a couple of days ago was preceded by a post on her social media a couple of weeks ago calling out the culture of glorifying playing through pain in sport. She said on the cover of this post is a quote in bold type, "If you really cared, you could play with this pain." And she said that was something she was told by someone close to her. And this is really common, isn't it? It was 3 days ago that we had Alexander Zverev after his defeat in Hamburg to Alexander Müller bragging really that there were only 2 players in the world that would have taken to the court in the physical state that I was in today. We think he was implying the other one was Novak Djokovic, but that hasn't been confirmed. And in fact, Caroline Garcia's post was put to Alexander Zverev in his press conference yesterday, and he didn't seem to understand the point that was being put to him at all, actually. But it was put to a number of other players today, and there were some fascinating exchanges. I was in Emma Raducanu's press conference, and P.S. that was the best Emma Raducanu press conference I've ever been in. I felt like that was the first time I sat in a room with the real Emma Raducanu. I thought there was a massive shift in her today. No defensiveness, real openness, genuine relaxation in her face and in her demeanour. There wasn't a suspicion or an anxiousness or a wariness on either side of the media player divide. I think it was helped by it being in room 2, which is a proper press conference room, but it is quite small and intimate. You can generally have some quite good exchanges in there. But look, I'm not suggesting that means anything in terms of her form or what she's going to do here. I don't think it's about that, but I was so pleasantly surprised by how I found Emma Raducanu today. And look, I asked her about playing through injury, because obviously she suffered this back injury in Strasbourg last week and has had a rough old time of it with injuries. And she said, look, I think as players we always push on through because there's no real breaks in the season. So if you kind of miss some weeks, you're just taking that time out from yourself because there's not really enough time in the calendar to rest. So it does kind of hurt us, she said, because we'll push through and then probably do some more damage. She said, I know from my personal experience with my wrists, remember she had that double surgery a couple of years ago, 18 months ago. She said, I was struggling for 7 months with them before I ended up having surgery. I just kept pushing through because people were telling me I wasn't tough enough and that I needed to work through it. Like, it's normal, I'm feeling fatigued because I'm training so much. When in reality, I knew there was pain and I knew it felt more than just soreness. And she said, I wish I would have listened to myself sooner and I would have saved myself 12 months of struggling. But she said, I've learned from that. And she said, I'm more astute now when it comes to pain and what's manageable and what should be taken more seriously. And I just sought clarification on that when she said people were telling me that I wasn't tough enough, whether she meant, people on the internet that she doesn't know, because there's a lot of people on the internet that she doesn't know telling her not so great things about herself. But no, she meant people around her. She said, she didn't specify who, but she said, yep, people around me. She said, look, I was only 19 at the time, so she was vulnerable and very susceptible to what people around her were saying. And Naomi Osaka had a similar take on the situation. She says she doesn't feel that pressure to play through injuries now, but when she was younger, before she developed a sense of self and confidence in her instincts, she did feel it a lot. And Taylor Fritz talked about it today.
Yeah, and I think with him, we were trying to get to the bottom of why. What he said, this has been his most unhealthy year as a tennis player, and it dates back to the tournaments in February in Dallas and Delray. He said, I shouldn't have been playing these tournaments. I wasn't fit enough to give a proper account of myself. And it seems as though that has persisted. He's had an abdominal problem, I think.
He's right. It's
horrible part of the body, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not a great thing when you have to, when that's the power source for your biggest weapon, and being your serve. And
he was asked Is it about your sponsors? Is it about a commitment you made to a tournament? You know, you're getting paid and all the rest of it. He said, no, it's just it's my competitiveness. I convince myself that I'm okay, that I can play through this, that I can still do well even though I've got what I've got.
And I don't doubt him for a second. I think that adrenaline is like, adrenaline is incredible. I mean, like, you know, I'm the furthest thing from Taylor Fritz, and like I ran the Boston Marathon with a broken foot once and I was only going to run like 3 miles. You know, it's a Boston Marathon. I qualified. I had, and then I had tripped like 3 weeks before my last long run, and I cracked my 5th metatarsal, but you know, it started to heal, and I was going to write something about it, and I was like, yeah, I'll go to the starting line. I'm just going to run the first like 5K, and you know, it's the Boston Marathon, and like, you know, it's the highlight of distance running, and you just get there, and like there's 5K into it, and I was like, oh, this is pretty fun. And I ran another few miles, and I was like, this is great. And then I was like, well, my friend lives in Wellesley, which is right around the halfway mark. And she said I could stop there, and she'd give me a ride back into Boston where I was staying. I was like, so I'll go to the halfway mark. But then you go through the Scream Tunnel, which is around Wellesley College, where you have like thousands of people yelling for you. And like, I didn't have any foot pain. And, you know, like I was running into the hills in Newton, and I pulled out my phone and I called my friend, and I was like, I'm doing this. I feel great. And like, I couldn't walk, you know, like, and I cannot tell you like the pain I was in the next day, and like what a stupid thing it was to do. But in the moment, like, I felt great. Like, and I'm sure like if you're Taylor Fritz, like, I got a tournament, this is what I do, you know, I want to beat this guy, I want to do it, and all of a sudden, like, he feels great. And yeah, like that happens. I'm sure that happens to all of them.
And if that, in your case and in Taylor Fritz's case, like if that is internally generated, then like, okay, fair enough. Like that decision's on you. But I guess that's a kind of separate thing, I suppose, to the culture of how we talk about players playing through injury. How we glorify it. I think that is what Caroline Garcia is calling out, right? That, okay, if you want to do that, that's on you, that's your call, but we shouldn't hold people up as heroes necessarily for doing that, because that comes from a slightly archaic place of sort of macho-ness, I think, and, you know, not respecting or not having boundaries for yourself, or I don't know.
If it was a contact sport, what you have is the other thing, which is you have people playing with concussions. Like that's
right.
What you used to have is, you know, you used to people used to bang their heads and wake up dizzy, and you know, they were having concussion syndromes, and people would, you know, but they were glorified because, like, you know, yeah, you just play through this, you get your teeth, it's an important match or game or, you know, whatever. And, you know, what you end up with is a lot of ex-athletes with brain damage for having done that. So, like, that, tennis is not a contact sport, but I'm sure there are many tennis players whose careers were cut short because they played through what, you know, were hardcore injuries that they shouldn't have.
Or whose later years are marred by intense chronic pain.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, Del Potro, we know, obviously. You know, there's probably also, you know, I think, like, there's probably also some not great doctors. There's some doctors who have dual incentives. You know, I mean, there's all these trainers that, like, come out and, you know, they're with the tours, they're with the tournaments, they're with, you know, they know the players want to, I mean, I'm not, I guess I am questioning, like, are they always telling the players exactly what they need to hear? Are they in the middle of a stadium with 15,000 people and, you know, don't want to be the one to say, yeah, it's a terrible idea for you to keep playing?
Is this Roger Federer's fault? Because everybody celebrates his record of never having retired from a match.
Yeah, it feels harsh to say it's his fault. Maybe it's, those people who put such an emphasis on that record, as you're saying. The way we talk about it, I think, probably needs to evolve, doesn't it? But it does strike me that it's interesting. It's obviously been a talking point today, and I think it is one of those talking points that does regenerate. I remember Rafael Nadal probably 15 years ago talking about how the ranking system needs to be based on a 2-year system rather than a 1-year, so that you can protect players when they're injured more. That would be terrible for players trying to break through. There would be obvious drawbacks to that, but in terms of trying to protect players a little bit when they're injured and take the pressure off them feeling like they have to play because of they got to protect ranking points and all that kind of thing, with the way it works now on the 1-year cycle, like a 2-year ranking system would help that. And maybe there are some other ways that we can alleviate those pressures.
I think it's I actually think there's a really simple solution, which is to lower the number of tournaments that count towards your ranking. Like, if you want to be Taylor Fritz and you're addicted to competing, like, great, have at it. But you're not going to improve your rank. That's one way to do it, or lower the number of mandatory tournaments.
But don't you think the market would recalibrate to that adjustment in that if players were required to play fewer tournaments, then the market of the guarantee market for lower tournaments, lower status, lower ranking point tournaments to try and persuade players to come and play there, that market would adjust. They'd offer higher guarantees to players, and then the incentive, the financial incentive would elevate to kind of compensate for the lost ranking incentive. Yeah. And look, different things matter more to different people. Not everybody would consider the financial incentive equivalent to the ranking, but I don't know. I certainly think it wouldn't hurt, but there's so much at play here, and there does seem to be just a very broad cultural issue.
But there's also, in the Carlos Alcaraz commercial on Netflix, like that whole weird scene of like the doctors in training saying, "Don't worry about the pain. You're actually, it's not going to do any long-term damage." We're like, and I don't know. He had to do. I remember we were here talking about it with him last year. And he was explaining how the doctor told me, like, well, what is it? Is it like phantom pain? Like isn't pain an indication of something? And I don't know. I've never heard a doctor tell me not to pay attention to the pain. It
sounded like he was being gaslit about his pain, and maybe that's an impression we have now after that documentary. But there was that. I found it a really chilling moment when they showed Alcaraz playing in the early rounds of Madrid with the sleeve on his arm when he was first coming back from the injury, and he's holding back on the forehand, as we know he was all the way through Madrid. He explained that to us here, didn't he, last year? And Juan Carlos Ferrero turns to
Albert
Molina, the agent, and says soft. He's being soft. I found that really gross. And I know it's just a snapshot, but that's problematic. Yes,
but it is also part of sport, isn't it? To be tough as well. Sometimes, we've just been watching Novak Djokovic, who will talk about playing through injuries. We talk about Thomas Mahatch, who's had a lot of retirements, and we judge that to sometimes, right?
I don't judge the fact of him retiring. I'm, making a judgment on the fact he's getting injured so much, not the fact that he's retiring because of those injuries.
But I suppose
I don't wish he were playing through the injuries.
No, I know,
and not retiring.
But there are different levels of injury, aren't there? And some players will find a reason not to play with an injury that might not be that serious, or You know, they're not all going to be the same.
Yeah, like injury and pain is an unfortunate fact of sport, right? Like the human body is maybe not supposed to do what these people put themselves through. Like, how often do you hear players say, I think Ruud said it today, didn't he? Like, he's barely played a match in his life without some level of pain in his body. And
he said it's probably a good job I didn't know that when I was starting out, that I'd be in this much pain this often.
But I suppose what we're talking about is the taking that to an extreme, and there's a problematic element there. Like, ideally, these people would have absolutely no pain at all, but then, like, the sport might not exist. Like,
Matt, you had a one-on-one chat with Naomi Osaka after a press conference. How was that?
It was great. You know, like, she's engaging, and you know what I always like about Naomi is that, you know, I think what we could all agree is, you know, a gas bag culture that we live in, like, she doesn't really waste a word. You know, she's sort of revealing and careful at the same time, and, you know, doesn't go on, and, you know, like, I've talked to her a number of times, you know, just one-on-one, and, you know, I always find it pretty rewarding. And you know, we were talking about her sort of climbing the ladder now, or attempting to, compared with trying to climb the ladder as a teenager and going through it differently. You know, it's a topic I'm pretty interested in, because I think there's a number of players who are trying to claw their way back to a spot, and, you know, some of them broke through sooner than others did, and sort of having them compare that experience, and, you know, what they've learned, what they know now, things like that. And so we were talking to some about that, and yeah, I mean, I think it's I'm endlessly fascinated by this Naomi 2.0 or 3.0 journey that she's on. She
was really interesting in her press conference about the decision to go and play that 125 in Saint-Malo, wasn't she? That she ended up winning. Like, she was like, yes, that was very humbling for me to do that, and I did take some persuading.
Yeah, she said she had quite a lot of pride.
Yeah, I was in Rome and we talked about that quite a bit, with the few of us who were there, and you were mentioning Emirata Kanu before, by the way, and I was going to say, like, I had the same experience as you did in Rome, where it was the first time, I think, since the U.S. Open in 2021, where I felt like I was, like, standing with, like, a quasi-regular person. Like, she was just, I mean, there weren't that many of us there, and, you know, the availabilities in Rome are much more, and at a lot of tour events are much more informal. I like it a lot. It's much better. They do this mix zone thing, which is just, you know, it can be a little bit shorter, but the players are so much more relaxed when they're not sitting at a table behind a microphone. And,
area energy.
Yeah, and you're just sort of shooting the breeze with them, and like, that was the sense I got from Raducanu, and it was really like nice to see. Like, oh,
I found it really uplifting.
Yeah, it was
earlier.
really,
I was not expecting that.
But Naomi had said, yes, this was all, like, Patrick had said this, and it was different, and it was weird, and you know, I really sort of, like, had to win every match, and you know, there was moments. I mean, she's so. I had written this in a story that I wrote about her at the time a couple weeks ago. How she. You know, I talk about being revealing. How she said, like, in Madrid, when she was losing that match, and, you know, she's really disappointed and not having a good time. She was, you know, falling behind. It was third set or something, and she's, like, standing there getting ready to serve, and she's actually thinking about, like, flight schedules and looking at the time and, like, trying to figure out if she can catch a late flight and go see her daughter for a couple of days. And
like Tim Emmon at the French Open.
Yeah, in 2004.
He's thinking about flight schedules as well. Yeah, so she's thinking about that, and then she was behind in one of the Saint-Malo matches as well, and she said it sort of drifted to that for a minute, and she's like, okay, I got to stop doing that. It's just your basic sort of fight or flee battle that everybody's brain has at some point, and she got through it and she won, and it was just really good for her to just win a bunch of matches. And I talked to Martoglu about this as well, and he said he's like, she was great in practice. He was like going back to my academy or wherever they were going to go and like training. She was going to get nothing out of that. She was going to hit the ball. She's a great ball striker. She was going to hit the ball great on a practice court. Like what she needed practice doing was competing and like being in hard situations and fighting her way through them. And she did that and was doing that in the first few matches in Rome, and then lost that, nail biter.
Against Peyton Stearns?
I think, right. Because I was about to say, wait a minute. Peyton Stearns beat Madison Keys in a third set tiebreaker. And then I was like, am I confusing them? No, she actually did it. She actually beat Naomi in a third set tiebreaker.
Beat 3 players.
Right, exactly.
7-6 in the third.
Svitolina as well.
I think what, the idea was that she had moments in those matches when she fell behind and wasn't competing. But that was some of what we've been talking about. And like I said,
there was also an interesting comment from Osaka on the topic of playing through injury, wasn't there, about how, kind of linked to what you've just said there, Matt, about maybe sometimes the mind can wander. She said she feels like sometimes she plays better when she's injured because it kind of focuses the mind. It's like you can only really maybe play in one way, and we saw that. I remember in Australia this year, she's eventually reached the point where she couldn't play, but like there were moments where she was clearly injured, but just hitting the ball like a dream.
We saw it with Djokovic in Australia as well.
Absolutely,
Alcaraz.
yeah. So that kind of comes into the equation as well. Like they can. There's that dual thing. Like they maybe know they're doing damage, but they can also win, and they love that feeling too. So it's a fascinating subject.
Anything else to report from Media Day or Media Days? Casper Ruud?
I did enjoy Casper Ruud's company. I know you do, and Charlie does as well whenever we speak to you both. And because he's just so considered, he just comes in and he seems like a pretty open book.
Norwegians are perfect, aren't they? They just are. Like, we should just say it. Like, they're just perfect. I've gotten to know them from like covering the Winter Olympics and covering both alpine skiing and Nordic skiing and biathlon, and it's like one after another.
The Vikings Klæbo's
the best cross country skier in the world. He can be a little bit of an iconoclast, but the rest of them, they're all
the Vikings. Sketchy CV.
Yeah, I guess so, but like maybe this modern version of the Vikings.
They've evolved.
Yeah, it's all that oil money, I guess.
He was asked about the Sinner match in Rome, and he said, I practiced with him the other day, and I found myself 4 love down in about 12 minutes. I thought, I love this honesty, He says, fortunately, after a while, I got myself together and I got a few games. But he was giving an idea of just how hard it is to play against Jannik Sinner right now. He's got his maybe 2 modes of playing against players, and neither one of them was working against this guy. If he played it, big and hard, trying to dominate, Sinner could handle it, and he can move out of the corners. If he tried the loopy ball, Sinner just steps in and takes it on the rise. It just sounds like a nightmare. But
are they in the same? They're not in the same half of the draw, are they? Because I don't want to see that match again.
No, Casper Ruud is a potential quarter-final opponent for Alcaraz.
Yeah.
So, again, he's just he's just a straightforward talker, and enjoyed speaking to him.
Okay, well, that's Media Day. Done and dusted, and that's it for part 1. We'll be back in part 2 to talk about the titles that have been won today, and of course title number 100 for Novak Djokovic. Welcome back to part 2 of the tennis podcast, where we want to talk now about Novak Djokovic winning his 100th title in Geneva, 7-6 in the third over poor old Hubert Hurkacz. Thoughts and prayers with him at the moment. 100th title, something that the organisers of Geneva, Matt, seem rather more excited about than Novak Djokovic.
Yeah, I was expecting there to be a 100 T-shirt that Novak Djokovic had,
or at least a smile.
Had in his bag. Yeah, exactly.
Well, his son had the hat.
Right, oh, did he?
His son had a hat that said L. Is an L on... No, L is 50.
L is 50?
Oh, what am I thinking? I'm thinking, yeah, God.
Right.
So I thought, okay.
That would have been
correct that.
That would have been
very sophisticated.
Roman numerals.
Yeah. I thought that's what the L stood for. Well, then good for him for wearing an L hat. You know? That's strong self-esteem.
But no, look, Djokovic won this pretty epic match, really. It was about 3 hours long. It took him 2 tie breaks from a set down, a deciding set tie break. And he won it, and he just sort of shrugged and consoled a pretty desolate Hubert Hurkacz and sat down with his kids. And look, he looked like he was enjoying it. But I really thought there was going to be a huge celebration from him. Like,
maybe it's because I was with him in Miami, and like it was almost like he didn't even know it was 100. Like, oh, is it 100? Oh, yeah, I guess it is 100.
He
Great.
knew,
like
though.
he knows,
Come
but it's
on.
so. But like,
He's not bothered.
He is bothered.
like he would care if it was
he
100.
mentioned it as one of his
103.
remaining
Right.
career goals.
Well, yeah, it'd be nice, but like, let's see him if he gets to 103.
I agree,
I think 103 and 104.
Right.
I agree
like-
that's a bigger deal, but you have to do 100 to get to 103.
So how many's Federer on?
103.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, I think he's like, it's a nice number, but it means nothing. You know, it's like
Gosh, that's...
Well, every number is arbitrary.
His body language would certainly suggest.
Yeah.
not the
Sorry.
numbers that are better than anybody else.
No, true. Yeah, I agree. 103 is a way bigger deal, but I was expecting something. I don't know whether it's because the second the match was over, his mind went to Roland Garros, or whether it was the manner of the victory. I mean, yes, he was consoling a desolate Hubert Hurkacz, but he also, in his post-match interview with the World Feed, moments after match point, absolutely savaged Hubert Hurkacz.
Quote of the week, that was better than anything we've had at Media Day. He said, well, he kind of broke himself, didn't he?
And he's not wrong.
There was just no way that Hubert Hurkacz was going to win this match
No.
against Novak Djokovic in those circumstances. Absolutely no way. We are talking about 2 players at complete opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of that quality of, and I will use the word since Matt is here and he is American, I can use it, that quality of being clutch. Like, Novak Djokovic is as clutch as you get, and Hubert Hurkacz is the opposite of that. And we saw that in the final set tiebreak. He made 5 forehand errors, Hurkacz. Like, that's a weak spot that breaks under pressure, and Djokovic has now won 6 consecutive tiebreaks against Hubert Hurkacz. This always happens in their matches, and it was just extraordinary to see it unfold over 3 hours, and yet you knew the ending. You knew it, and that's kind of what makes Novak Djokovic so great.
So you had a totally unmoved Novak Djokovic there in the trophy ceremony while the Geneva Bull kids are forming the shape of 100 on the clay.
And then they brought out some balloons.
They made up for it.
Like when you throw a party for somebody that's not into
Not into
parties.
Or doesn't want to celebrate the fact that they've just turned 60.
Also, he's Novak Djokovic. He can't like go nuts for winning at 250. Like,
I
come
agree.
on. He's
I think
got-
it was really
I thought
cool of him.
Yeah,
I thought he could have, smiled. But I did think it was cool that he was unbothered.
It's like, we all know why I'm here, what I'm doing. Like, I'm trying to get ready for the French Open. This is great. Thank you for giving me a nice week.
So what does it mean for the French Open, for Novak Djokovic then?
Well,
You were quite convinced by his tennis, David.
at the end, yeah. It was only once Hubert Hurkacz had broken himself. After that had happened, suddenly that thing happens that I see from, well, I was going to say from time to time, but let's be honest, a lot of Novak Djokovic's career, where he finds a gear. And I relate it to him relaxing in a match. Suddenly it's like he finds a zen and he stops trying to muscle the ball and it just starts coming out of the centre of the strings like a trampoline. And that began to happen at about 5-6 in that third set. And I thought, Hubert, you've got no chance now. I mean, not only have you got to deal with your own nerves here, you're dealing with an opponent who suddenly is reminding you why he's won all these titles. And he's got one of the most powerful ball strikes in the world in those moments, even though you don't think of him as the big forehand guy or the big server. It's just elastic, liquid power, and it only happens when he's totally confident, when he's totally zen-like, and I think he's basically unbeatable in that situation. I only saw it for about the last 10 minutes of the match, but I haven't seen that all year. Maybe since, no, I have. I saw it against Alcaraz. When he came back against Alcaraz, we saw it then. So if you can find that timing, therefore, is still there, it's the movement that is still surely a question mark.
Yeah, it kind of looked like he wasn't fully committing to like some slides, to like some defensive.
A bit like at Wimbledon
plays.
last year when he was tentative on that knee just after surgery.
Is that because of the knee? Is that because he doesn't want to get injured with Roland Garros and Wimbledon, like right here? Given he's not that bothered about 100, like bigger things on the horizon. Like, I don't know. We'll find out. But I definitely think he, as David said, he found some form.
That was my reading of the movement, is that they were both being really careful, and I think the court was shit.
Yeah, there was a terrible bounce.
There was like several, like
there was a terrible bounce that got Hurkacz a key break in the third. There was several fouls.
They had to call the guys out to fix the court in the middle, in between sets. They're like, no, come back. You need like. There was other moments where he like lost his footing, and he started laughing, and he like picked up his foot. I think they were not comfortable on that court with a Grand Slam, like starting in 2 days or the next day. And they're not going to play tomorrow, but like I think that was I think they played those first 2.5 sets at about 75%.
This is supposed to be the most exciting day in the Geneva Open's history, and the court's been called shit, and Novak Djokovic is utterly unbothered by their exciting, proud moment.
Great crowd, though, to see.
It was incredible, and it's a beautiful setting, isn't it? The wide shot of that centre court with the mountains in the background is stunning. Okay, does anyone think Novak Djokovic is making it past the quarterfinals here then?
Yes.
Semis? I think he's making it to the semis and he'll lose to Sinner.
Would be my prediction at this stage, yeah.
David?
That sounds about right, I would think. But I don't know. I'm still not that convinced by Sinner's draw, for instance. I think that top half of the draw could be fun. I think we could see stuff happen that isn't just run of the mill.
Other Matt, where's Djokovic getting to?
Yeah, I think like the big takeaway for me from Geneva was he was able to convince himself that he can beat the sorts of players who are going to Geneva the week before the French Open, which is the players that he's going to face in the first few matches. And those are the players that have been beating him, frankly, the last couple of months. And like, I think he had lost a lot of confidence and was feeling like, can I beat anyone anymore? And like, okay, I can beat those players. I know how to compete with them again. I think I know what I have to do. And so I do have a lot of confidence in him getting through the first week. And yeah, sure, I guess that to me puts him, if he can, look, a lot of this is predicated on his body holding up. And he's just played several matches this week, and now he's got to play, many 3 out of 5 set ones. So, like, I think a lot of it is, for much of the year, it was like the body's not there and the tennis isn't there. If both are there, then sure, he's going to play a semifinal against Jannik Sinner. I don't really like that matchup these days for him, but on clay, I certainly give him a decent chance.
It was a second title of the year and a first at 500 level for Flavio Cobolli. He beat Andrei Rublev 6-2, 6-4 to win Hamburg. Incidentally, Cobolli plays round one here, Roland Garros, against lucky loser Marin Cilic. He got in as a lucky loser yesterday. And Rublev plays round one here against the guy that beat Cilic in the final round of qualifying, Lloyd Harris. David, you're a big Cobolli guy.
Yes, I am a bit. Ever since that match we watched here against Holger Rune last year, which I think is probably my highlight of the tournament from last year, on one of the slightly smaller courts. I mean, not small. I think maybe
Court 14. It was.
14. Is that about the fourth show court, something like that, or fifth, something like that?
Fourth.
Yeah.
And it's just a sunken court where you sit on steps, and it was rammed that day, and it went to a fifth set 10-point tiebreak. It was just brilliant, and his forehand really stands up under pressure, and he's exciting. I think he brings a crowd in. He really gets people engaged, but he's had such a terrible start to this year. He lost the first 8 matches he played of the whole year. Then he wins a 250 about a month and a half ago. This was big, though, to go and win a 500 and come through and kind of dominate Rublev. It was, I thought, really impressive. And I do think it's a tough turnaround to win a tournament like that. Take a flight, come here, and then just be ready to go for best of 5 straight away. I'm never that sure if it's going to help them or not, really. But I like him. I certainly don't really want to see Marin Cilic lose matches very much, because I like Marin Cilic, but I'd quite like to see a Flavio Cobolli run.
And same goes, whether it's a good thing for the Grand Slam to win the week before the Grand Slam applies to, I guess, Elena Rybakina. She beat Lyudmila Samsonova 6-1, 6-7, 6-1 to win the Strasbourg 500 title. She plays lucky loser Yulia Riera in round one here, and she, a reminder, is in the sort of Ostapenko-Swiatek section of the draw. Did anyone see the trophy in Strasbourg?
It's kind of like pottery vibes.
Looks like a stack of moon cups to me.
Okay.
Weird trophy. Maya Joint, the 19-year-old Australian, defeated Jacqueline Christian to win Rabat without dropping a set all tournament. She's due to play Ayla Tomljanovic in round one here on Monday, although Tomljanovic was the player that retired against Maya Joint in the semi-finals in Rabat, so could be another lucky loser situation there. Matt, Maya Joint remains on the backhand watch list, I believe.
For sure. And the world might get a sort of bigger look at Maya Joint if she does come through the first round here, because her second round likely opponent is Jasmine Paolini. So there'll be sort of eyes on that one, I would have thought. Very much on the watch list. Anna Bogdan did lose in the first round of qualifying here and remains perennially in backhand list danger.
Peril.
Okay, that's it for part 2. We'll be back in part 3 to look ahead to tomorrow's order of play. Welcome back to part 3 of the Tennis Podcast, where we can look now at our first order of play for Roland Garros 2025.
About time.
This is the order of play for Sunday. On Philippe Chatrier, we start with
women in the Vibeless Death slot.
Women in the Vibeless Death slot. It's the world number 1 Arina Sabalenka against Kamila Rakimova. Then it's
women.
Anastasia Pavlyuchenkova, former finalist, against Zheng Qinwen.
You have to remember, Catherine, they take a holistic approach. My God.
It's so holistic. Third up, it is Lorenzo Musetti against Yannick Hanfmann. And Matt, in the night session on Philippe Chatrier tomorrow,
men.
And therefore, I've decided to just rename it the men's session.
Ben Shelton against Lorenzo Sonego. Look, we're not going to harp on about it. You know how we feel. It's ridiculous. But we did I genuinely, in my deep naivety, looked at, because yesterday they released the list of matches that would be played on Sunday without releasing the actual schedule and the court assignments, and I looked at the list of women's matches and the list of men's matches, and I thought, there isn't a men's match here that you can put on the night session. There just isn't the biggest name playing tomorrow on the men's side is Lorenzo Musetti. There were no obvious French players to put there. I think the sort of biggest French name is Mpéchi Perricard, and he can't hold up a night session. I really thought, you've got nowhere to go here but to put Aryna Sabalenka on your night session. Here's an open goal.
She'd love it.
And yet, here we are. Suzanne Lenglen tomorrow opens with Zeynep Sonmez against the Turkish player against Elina Svitolina. Then it is Giovanni Mpéchi Perricard against Zizou Bergs. Francis Tiafoe third on Lenglen against Roman Safiullin. And then Jasmine Paolini taking on Yuan Yui. On court Simone Mathieu, I feel like Matt might be making his way over there for this one. Tommy Paul against Elma Moller.
Who people are watching montages of. Fellow professionals, Casper Ruud and Joao Fonseca, they're watching montages on YouTube of this guy's backhand.
Matt spotted it first.
It's an incredibly extravagant backhand. He hits it like no one I've ever seen hit a backhand before. Throws his whole body into it. It's a great shot. I'd be very surprised if he's able to beat Tommy Paul. But I think you might be right. That might be where I'm starting my day tomorrow. That's a bit of a fun one.
Has he gotten help with the kit?
The kit?
Yeah. I think a couple weeks ago he was playing and...
Naked?
No, but it sort of looked like... this is, the whatever designer makes his kit. It's not like Nike or Adidas or something like that. It kind of looked like he had gone to Costco and grabbed something out of the bin, and it was kind of grey and it didn't really fit.
I think tennis generally is in such a bad kit moment.
I think I might have texted you and been like, "What is this? Who is this guy?"
It's entirely plausible that was just Nike's latest range.
Oh, was it?
Matt, have you seen their kits recently?
Some of them, yeah. It was. This one was especially bizarre.
You're right. We discussed his kit and his. Well, both of his ground strokes are stand out. The backhand because of how extraordinary it is, and the forehand for other reasons.
It's this kit sponsor. Do you recognise that? Can you identify that label?
I think it's some French thing. No, it's not. I'm mixing it up. I don't know.
Never seen it before.
Yeah.
Well, there we go.
It's what bizarre. Anyway. Great backhand kit in progress.
Do you remember that Australian Open when Dan Evans was getting his kit from Kmart?
Yes, I do. Remember it fondly. He had a good run.
He had a great run, yeah. What else have we got on the schedule tomorrow? I actually think Simone Mathieu is a really good place to be tomorrow. That's the most eye-catching schedule. Moller against Tommy Paul first up. Then Schneider against a Ukrainian qualifier, Anastasia Sobolyeva. Then Donna Vekic against Anna Blinkova. And Thomas Mahach against Frenchman Quentin Alice.
That could be a scene.
Court 14, Mariano Navone against Brandon Nakashima. Alex Mickelson against Juan Manuel Cerundolo, the lower-ranked qualifier Cerundolo. Then it's Amanda Anisimova against Nina Stojanovic.
Yep, have got notifications on for that result because it very much impacts my day.
And Marta Kostyuk against the young Czech qualifier Sara Bielik is last on court 14. Petra Kvitova is on court 7 tomorrow. Riley Opelka, as is Botic van der Zandschulp. Might take a little look at that. It's near the media centre, court 7. Alexandra Ayala is second on court 6 after Peyton Stearns against Ava Lees. That could be worth catching a little bit of her live for the first time, or certainly for me for the first time. Luca Nardi against Fabian Marozsan is on court 8. That stands out to me a little bit. Hamad Medjedovic opens up on court 8. Victoria Mboko, Matt, opens court 9 tomorrow against Lulu Sun, which I'm declaring a very good draw.
For who?
For Victoria.
Yeah, maybe. I think you could argue it probably both ways.
Sure.
I mean, Lulu Sun's playing somebody who's never played a Grand Slam main draw match before. So, yeah. But
she's lost to worse this year, Matt, let me tell you. David Jensen-Brixby's on Court 9 tomorrow, and he is one of the guys that you spoke to for Loitering with Law. Part 1, because, of course, Loitering with Law and Roberts still to come.
Absolutely.
Don't do it again and advertise an interview that isn't in the bag.
But Matt's looking on as if to say, yeah, that's just standard. You don't brag before you've got it.
It's not a brag, it's a bit.
It's quite a good bit, isn't
but yeah, I will be looking out for Jensen Brooksby. It was good to talk to him, and yes, I hope you all enjoy the results of the loitering alongside my good friend Matt Futterman here, who was sat with me asking, frankly, better questions than me.
It's a great show, and it's up now for friends of the Tennis Podcast, or very shortly, depending on when you're listening to this. It's going up today, and there are really only a few hours left of today. Just something else to flag for tomorrow. There will be this ceremony to honour and celebrate 14-time champion Rafael Nadal. He'll be there for that ceremony, and we thought we were going to have a big exclusive bit of information because David overheard something fortuitously shortly after recording last night, but unfortunately that tidbit of information is now being widely reported in global media, and that is that Roger Federer will be attending, we think, this ceremony.
Well, I overheard the rehearsal on Court Philippe Chatrier yesterday, where the Master of Ceremonies said Roger Federer, and I thought, okay, unless that's just sort of a placeholder for, imagine if we had somebody to announce. I think that is, that was,
and he should,
nailed on.
He should be here.
Absolutely.
it's going to be my 5th Rafael Nadal send-off. I just want to say.
They're all worth it, though.
Are they?
You old sinner.
I've sat through, I just wish there could have been just one grand one. But every tournament's got to have one. I mean, it's just... and there would have been 7 or 8 had he not stalked off, in Barcelona and
He's
Rome
fed up of them.
after doing disasters.
He's on the same page as you. He would have quite happily just had one, I think.
Well, he could have done... He had the power to do that, and he didn't, so...
It's a difficult
let's all remember
one,
there is a Rafael Nadal museum at the Rafael Nadal Academy. I mean,
wow!
I think he talks.
People will be coming.
I think
for you,
he talks a good game of I don't need anything, very humble. But then all of a sudden, there's all these celebrations of him.
Well, Chris Clary wrote in his book he is not averse to the cult of Nadal.
Yeah, I've read the book as well, and I 100% agree with Chris, and I've discussed this with him. So yeah, I'm on the same page as him. And
I mean, there was quite a lot of dissatisfaction in Spain with the send-off that he got at the Davis Cup. Because it was. Well, it was David Ferrer's fault, wasn't it? Because everyone was planning to be there on the Friday. I think the King, I think Djokovic were all going to be there, but it had to happen earlier because Spain lost, and there was a feeling that Nadal was kind of left out on his own in the middle of the court, and it was all kind of sad and lonely.
It was
a little bit. I thought it was quite touching as well, but there was a lot of criticism in Spain. As soon as Spain went out of the Davis Cup, that was all the Spanish journalists wrote about for the rest of that tournament, was how bad the ceremony was for Nadal. I think it sounds like this one's going to be a lot more sort of joyous, and he's going to be joined by a lot more people, and it sounds like Federer.
Because they've all happened after he's lost, so they've all been pretty awkward. And yes,
I wonder who played the role of Roger Federer in the rehearsal. What a moment for that guy. So that'll be tomorrow at the end of the day session, I believe. It'll be the day session crowd that get that.
And his academy are advertising it as a ceremony full of surprises, which maybe just means Federer, which has, as you said, been leaked. But I wonder whether they'll do anything else for Nadal. You know, like he's got his statue
They went
here.
early on the statue, didn't they?
There's already a Pista Rafa Nadal in Barcelona.
Okay.
Like, I don't know. I just wonder whether there'll be another announcement of another honouring, or whether it's literally just the ceremony. I kind of hope there is something more.
We'll let you know tomorrow, folks, where we'll be back with our day one Roland Garros podcast. We have our mascots, Phoebe, Maisie and Roger. Hello to you all. We have our executive producers and top folks, Greg, Chris and Jeff. And we have some shout-outs, Matt.
We have Michael Toth, who
Hello,
says,
Michael.
Catherine's Putney neighbour.
Yes.
Right, Michael. Like Michael Stick, who once reached the final here, believe it or not, in 1996.
Do we know what part of Putney? East Putney, West Putney, Putney Hill? No. Might be weird if he'd given us his exact address. What else do we know about Michael?
We know that he has done the calendar career attendance slam, although he says, like Serena, it was over 2 seasons. So he's calling it a Michael Slam.
As is your right,
which
Michael.
I really enjoyed. And he's also watched pod favourite Dominic Thiem's first round match at each one. So he's got a team watching slam too.
Don't bring up Dominic Thiem in the presence of Matt Futterman.
How many of those did he win, I wonder?
Well,
We don't know the years.
well, he did his Mike Slam in 2017-18, which was
Okay.
a good team
Good team
period.
time.
Oh, good.
So let's hope it was then.
Pleasing.
Nothing to say about Dominic Thiem, Matt?
He got a great tribute at, like, when he played in Austria for the last time, didn't he?
He did.
I think it's better that they
And now he's
handle it.
now he's showing up.
I'll defer to them. Yeah.
Now he's just showing up for coin tosses like a mascot. Thank you, Michael.
We've also got Elaine Hayworth, who is Irish but living in the UK.
Hello, Elaine.
Hi, Lane.
And Elaine has been listening for 5 years and was introduced by another friend of the pod, Laura Vagani.
This is what I like to hear. This is how it should work. Spread the word, folks. Just like Elaine.
Laura's
Elaine,
doing
well
just
done.
that.
Laura, well done.
I don't think Laura will have enjoyed the...
No, the Matt Futterman on Rafa Nadal section of this pod.
She might be coming for you, Matt.
She's not hearing this bit. She's just thrown the phone down.
I'm happy.
That is a worry.
I've Google has revealed a Maltese tennis player called Elaine Genovese. That's good, isn't it?
That is good.
What else do we know about Elaine?
Older than David, she says.
Is that the new higher lower?
Perfectly good age.
Love his flights of fancy back to Pete Sampras times.
Yes. See?
Don't we all?
Don't we all, Elaine? Thank you very much.
And finally, we have Stephen Malloy
Oh,
from County Clare in Ireland. And
Another
Stephen
Irish
says,
person.
I'm always described as being good on Twitter during my shout-outs, but I've abandoned that burning ship. Maybe I can be good on the barge instead.
You are.
And
You are,
already are,
Stephen.
Stephen.
Confirmed.
Yeah. Stephen is... We love Stephen. Thank you, Stephen, for your continued support of the Tennis Podcast and your excellent work on the barge. Like Stephen...
Farrow.
Who is
That's
tournament
good, actually, because they're
director
both
of the
Stephen
United
with a
Cup.
PH.
Yes.
Well done. Nuance.
Stephen Huss, who once won Wimbledon doubles. There you go.
Also a PH.
Yes.
Very good.
Also one of my middle names.
Oh, yeah, you've got many, haven't you? How many?
2. Oh no,
He's
people will be
posher
coming
than-
for me now.
He's posher than you think, Matt Roberts. Folks, let's get this show off the road. This is our final preview. Tomorrow, the fun truly begins. A reminder that every episode of the Tennis Podcast is now available wherever you get your podcasts, and that includes YouTube. Matt Futterman, thank you very much for joining us. The Tennis Podcast is proudly part of the Athletic Podcast Network, and this is 3 down, 15 to go. We'll speak to you tomorrow.